Hello and welcome to 52%, and we're back for a second series, and as you can see we've shaken things up a bit. Our Jen has flown the nest, boo! But we've brought in a few more wonderful women who will be joining us regularly as we talk about everything and anything going on in Liverpool and beyond from the perspective of 52% of the population, women. So let me introduce you to Sarah, the brains behind Tough Girl Challenges, Kathy from the Boudoir book, who empowers women through her photography, and Maisie, our jack of all trades, who is an educator, theatre genius and yoga instructor, who will all be hosting the show alongside myself, Lisa.
Yes, and this week we're going to be talking about gender and equality in the workplace.
And we're also going to be visiting an inspirational woman called Maggie Mullen, who's overcome many obstacles in her career to start her own firm.
And today we're joined by Marc Wilkinson, a Michelin Star Chef from Fresh, who will be talking about women in the kitchen.
So here's what's coming up on today's show. Today we're joined by Marc Wilkinson from Fresh, who has had an incredible career so far as head chef in Pennyhill Park and then starting his own restaurant in Oxton, which has won a Michelin star, no less. So food programmes are everywhere at the moment. We've got celebrity chefs galore. However, they all seem to be male.
The celebrity chefs
seem to be male.
Yeah, they do seem to be more dominated. What do you think about that? Do you have a view?
Being one yourself, Marc.
Well, I'm not a celebrity chef.
I'm just a celebrity chef.
I'm more of a cook, really, so I'm not in that bracket.
What's the difference between a cook and a chef?
That's interesting you've used the word cook.
Chef is French for boss.
Ah, okay.
So if you're called chef, it means you're the boss of the kitchen.
But you work alone in your kitchen, don't you?
I have done, yeah, for years. I've now taken somebody on.
Have you?
Brave.
So you can call yourself chef now?
Yeah, I'm a big bad chef now, yeah.
And
That's
is that
good.
person male or female, Marc?
This one's male.
Oh, okay, okay.
This one's male. But it's not, it's just who applies, really.
Okay.
When I was at Pennyhill, one of my best chefs was a female who did the sauce. She was great. She was a bit of a tattoo freak, but she was brilliant.
Nobody saw that, did they? She was in the kitchen.
Well, no, in the kitchen she was safe, but, you know, tried to keep her
I find it
stock.
quite ironic, perhaps, that at home, mum does the cooking. It's always, you know, mum what's for tea, mum what's for tea. Yeah, in the celebrity world of, you know, the Gordon Ramsays, Jamie Olivers, the ones that bring the books out that have, you know, the popular restaurants, they're always led by men. Do you think this is gender inequality, or specifically in the restaurant trade, or do you think this is something that's across a lot of industries?
I think it's almost going back to like historically where you had women staying at home, you know, to be, you know, looking after the children, looking after the home, and you've got, you know, the men going out to be the breadwinners. Whereas I think now society's changing, so you've got more women going out to work. You've got, you know, both parents working. And what I found with amongst a lot of my friends is that actually things like the cooking actually get split. And I think more men are getting involved in the cooking and the culinary skills.
That, definitely.
So, and if I go out with a guy, I'd expect him to be able to cook and rustle up a decent meal. I'm not expecting just a spag bol or something.
Marc, who did the cooking in your home?
Me? My mother's a terrible cook.
Is she watching
No,
this?
my dad... No, she won't be watching this. But no, my mum was a poor cook, really.
So who
So
really sort of inspired you then, or how did you get your love for cooking?
Television,
Okay.
to be honest.
Was there a main chef or?
No,
or
it was a
cook?
programme. It was... Well, basically, I just needed money. We weren't affluent or anything, and I needed money. So the only way I could find a job at the time was in a hotel.
Right.
And they threw me in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it's
As a
purely... KP. Suddenly, they started giving me cooking jobs, preparation work.
So you actually worked your way from the very bottom of the
Yeah.
ladder then, didn't you?
I did.
Right through the levels.
Yeah, from 15, I started working in the kitchen.
Wow.
Have your bosses mainly been male, or have you had female bosses?
Combination, really. Combination. 2 places I worked, which are highly rated. One was 2-star Michelin restaurant. It was husband and wife team.
Wow.
So, but Well, to be careful what to say, she's brilliant, but she was definitely the boss.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
And she run a brilliant ship, though, to be fair.
Was she behind the scenes, or was she very active in the cooking
No,
process?
she wasn't active in the cooking process, but she was active in promotion, active in the
Business
dining
side.
room.
So who was the cook?
The husband was
husband.
the cook.
Well, like it or not, statistics do show that gender equality in the workplace is still something that we haven't yet achieved, from sexist attitude, struggles for fair maternity and paternity leave, to the pay gap that still exists almost 50 years after the Equal Pay Act. So many women experience sexism at work on a daily basis. One woman who has experienced all of this and overcome many, many obstacles put in her way to start her own business is architect Maggie Mullen. Gaelle went to meet her at one of her recent projects to find out more.
Maggie Mullen is a local architect who has been working in the industry for more than 20 years. You might not know her, but you certainly know some of her works, like the Central Library in Liverpool that she helped designing. In 2014, she started her own company, Maggie Mullen Architects Limited. Before that, she used to work at Austin Smith Lord, a corporate organization. So first of all, can you tell us about your time at your former firm, Austin Smith Lord?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I joined Austin Smith Lord as a senior architect in 2000. 1999-2000, and really worked my way up through and became a partner in about 2008, 2009. And the past sort of few years have been quite difficult because the practice hit lots of financial problems, and I think that's when you really see, you know, the nature of the people that you're working with. And lots of the former partners, the partners who brought me into the practice and who saw my value, had either retired or left. And so the core of partners that were left didn't necessarily share my values. And I think on reflection, it was a combination of insecurity, you know, a little bit of intolerance, and certainly, you know, a lack of vision. And there was a, you know, even, I firmly believe that the partners that were left, their only experience with women was either their wives or the people that they interacted with when they, you know, sort of on a leisure and social basis. And I feel that if I'd behaved like their wives, I would have been allowed to stay. But because I was assertive, and that was always held as being, you know, not described as being assertive, you're described as being aggressive. Yeah. And I think this is how sexism in professions actually works, is that it, you know, you take criticism, and it's to the core of your being. It's not about how you do your job, it's about you being unfeminine and, you know, and unladylike. So you're deemed as being aggressive if you're assertive and firm. I had to take lots of criticism at the core of who I was when I was trying to make a business successful. And, you know, I think, you know, in the last few months, they refused to speak to me. There was a fear there. They isolated me, and at the end of it, they called me to a kangaroo court where they made allegations against me, but said they didn't have to provide any evidence, but they had enough information to make a decision about me. And when I pushed them, they said that, you know, all they could quote was that I'd once called them bullies, that I called one of them pathetic, and this was enough, as they thought, to substantiate them expelling me from the practice that I had built up. So, but it had gone too far at that stage. It's like, you know, and I think I quoted, you know, it was like a marriage. I think it gets to a point where it's, you know, I didn't want to go back. But it was a shock to be treated like that. And even afterwards, they were very dishonourable. And they'd cut off all my emails immediately. They wiped all my contacts. They went to see my clients the following week, and they were quite economic with the truth when they portrayed what actually happened. Case in point, I think if I'd been much more docile and accommodating to their egos, I would have been allowed to stay.
Would you say this sexism that you've experienced, would you say that it's something particular to the architectural industry, or, I mean...
Architecture and construction, yes. And I think in any profession as well, when money's tight, and resources are constrained and people are up against it in terms of pressure, then you start to see the cracks in the veneer of tolerance. And I think because architecture is so underrepresented, and because the course is so long, so by the time, I mean, I was 27, 28 by the time I qualified, and if you want to have a family life, you're immediately into that position where you're seen as being a problem because you're of childbearing age. And I remember having a professional, or having a sort of staff appraisal with a partner with this firm who asked me whether I was going to have another child, you know, and how that would impact upon, because I said I wanted to be a partner, and he asked me if I was going to have another child, because obviously necessarily that would impact upon my likelihood of being offered partnership. And so you always know there's an undercurrent that because you've got a womb, that you're a ticking time bomb and therefore a risk to the business. And I was determined not to, you know, I came back, you know, and I think on reflection, you know, I played the game with them. I came back to work when my children were 5 and 6 months old, and, you know, worked very, very, very hard afterwards and put the practice first. I don't, and I think a lot of women don't. They don't look back and say, look what I've achieved. They go, oh, I've still got so much to do, and this has happened. And I think that, whether it's a gender issue or, you know, necessity, you don't get the opportunity to rest on your laurels. And I think that's actually what makes successful women so charismatic, because they look forward, they don't look back. And I think that's the important lesson, and the one that's for me, is to spend my life on positive things and with positive people.
Thank you very much, Maggie.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Welcome back, and on this episode we're talking about gender equality in the workplace. Before the break we met Maggie Mullen, who has experienced sexism at her previous employers before leaving to start her own business. Sexism, is it rife today, do you think? And Mark, I include this in this discussion, include you in this discussion. Have you ever experienced sexism? Because it's quite usual for it just to be women.
I've definitely experienced sexism. Have you?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm the other one out. As a victim now, I can't think of any time I have been.
Have you seen any going on in any of the places you've worked? Would you?
To be honest, no. I mean, thankfully, I've worked in good, well-respected establishments throughout my career.
Yeah.
I mean, I have worked in environments where it is very professional. Yeah. So I'm lucky that, lucky, I don't know if it's lucky, it's my choice that I want to work in professional environments. So it's not something I've been, you know.
I'd say even in some of the most professional environments, that's sometimes where you can experience the most sexism. So
The worst experiences of it, often.
So with Maggie's, you know, being in an architecture firm, I've experienced it in banking. You know, I'm sure it will be rife in more sort of male-dominated industries, for example.
I worked in, I couldn't call it a male-dominated industry because it's at the time it was still in its infancy. I was in IT for 14 years, and whilst I was working in Liverpool and in Manchester, I found staffing to be about 50-50, management to be about 50-50, and there to be no issues. But when I went to work in North Wales, things were different, and it was as if I'd gone back in time a little bit. No offence to anybody in North Wales, but I did notice that I would put a suggestion forward, it would be ignored. Guy next to me put the suggestion forward, it would be taken up, just like the old joke. So I think it depends what industry you're in, where you are as well, and as you say, how high up we're going.
And interestingly that you say that, I used to live and work in Leeds, and I moved to North Wales, but that was many years ago, because in defence of North Wales now, I am going to say that the whole culture has moved and shifted and changed, and it is radically different.
Yes.
But I do recognise exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
In terms of the change in attitude, you know, in terms of the attitudes towards women and the sort of stereotyping. And interestingly, what Maggie was saying, particularly about things like how the same behaviour in men and women can be perceived very differently.
Very differently, yeah.
If you voice an opinion as a woman and you do that with some enthusiasm and passion, you know, you're pushy or you're
Yes,
opinionated.
or ruthless. Or,
That can, ruthless, that can happen. Whereas if you know, men do that, then you know that's a positive thing.
they're a high flyer, a go-getter.
Exactly.
Tends to be more positive
Of course.
descriptions for men.
And this, it does tend to be, and this doesn't mean, of course, that all men and all women are like that, because there are individual differences. We have, I think, a sort of group perception, and then we're confronted with the individual.
Yes.
And the individual does not conform to the group perception.
Pregnancy and the ages of women when, you know, they're applying for jobs. Mark, I mean, you know, you're currently looking for front of house staff. Now, I suppose there's a little bit of a different situation for yourself, because a lot of front of house staff are quite young and it's usually a step up to something else. However, if you were looking for a management role and, you know, a lady applied and she's late 20s, early 30s, recently married, is that going to affect your whether you take her on or not if you had a guy that was just as qualified or perhaps less so?
No, it wouldn't at all, to be honest. I don't see it that way. I had a female restaurant manager for 6 years.
Brilliant.
Great.
And I find they deal with situations sometimes better than men.
More logical, yeah.
I won't say logical, but no, they can
We do know
firefight better.
52% of the population are women. Just putting that out there.
I
Just
know.
in
I'm,
case you
I'm
forgot.
feeling the minority here today anyway.
Mark, you're very welcome.
Yes, we have our full support.
Is there still inequality in the workplace? I mean, you know, women are still underpaid. Yes,
They
the
are,
gap
yeah.
is getting closer.
I read
But it's 2015.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I read an interesting report yesterday, and it's a new study that's been done, showing that the people studied women in management and to see what commonalities they had, what things they held in common. And the thing that really stood out was, as children, they were taught to expect to have a career. So we're looking at conditioning for a starting point, either the self-fulfilling prophecy, and also we can look at education. I was listening to a programme on Radio 4 last night, because I'm so highbrow, and it was talking about Colombia, one of the most macho countries you can imagine. 50% of the management level of workforce are women. And they think the reason for that, oddly enough, is women go to school for 2 years longer. And the reason for that is it's safer there than being at home, because violence in Colombia begins in the home. The other thing is there's an awful lot of cheap childcare from the lower classes who are struggling. People will leave places like Lima to go and work in the capital, or you know, in a different country even, to live there, just so they can support their own children. There's lots of different variables involved in
Do you
this.
think that's a big thing today, though? I mean, Mark, so, you know, say you employ a female manager and she's got a couple of kids, she needs to take time off because one of the children's sick. How is that going to affect how your restaurants run? I mean, you have a very well-oiled machine. It's so specific in how it has to be run. She phones in sick, you can't take over. What happens?
Well, it's the same if the male manager is
But
child
usually
sick.
it's the woman that stays at home
I was
with
going
the
to say,
child.
that's an assumption, the fact
Yeah.
that if a child is sick, then it should be the woman
Yeah.
who should stay at home, whereas it wouldn't necessarily be expected of the man to do that.
Yes.
But actually, on a sort of a different issue, I've actually had friends who've, you know, got engaged or in their early 30s, but they don't actually wear their engagement ring into work because they don't want people to know that they're getting married, because it could affect their, you know, their career prospects, their bonus pay. It can affect a lot of things. So they sort of almost keep that a little bit
And
private.
acting a professional part and having
Absolutely.
the
Do you pay all your staff the same for the same roles?
Yeah,
Just
never been any different.
Do you think in your industry that's
No, in
prevalent?
hospitality,
or?
I would say it's a level playing field
Really?
for wages, as far as I know. Yeah,
I
I've
mean-
never paid differently for
Yeah,
a male
it's
or
against the
female.
law to do so, isn't
Well,
it?
it is
Since
now, yeah.
1970,
But it still
yeah.
happens, though.
But
doesn't it?
I think it's interesting though, because I've had people work for me before doing exactly the same job, male and female, being paid different amounts of money, and you bring this up and you try and argue your case, and they would say, well, you know, there's just something about him, and it's just like,
And that can be seen as being difficult, demanding, a troublemaker.
yeah.
Which in itself, it's unfair.
What I think is going to be interesting is when the big corporations do actually have to publish their pay what they're paying people, and comparisons are going to be so easy to actually use and take forward.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
How
Public
do we make
access to
these
that
changes,
information.
Mark? I mean, what would you suggest for, you know, how do women get a bigger voice? Obviously, we've touched on the fact that you work in a predominantly male environment. What is it that women need to do to break through, to get their book sold, to get their TV show, because it's so male orientated?
Well, I think there's people coming through now. I think there's women coming through. If it's just celebrity talking about,
Well, they only
because
become celebrity because they're good at what they do.
No,
I think social
No.
media is having a big
I agree
impact.
with him there.
I
It's
don't
not
agree
about-
with that
it's
one.
not
Go
about
on, why?
I have to be careful what I say, obviously.
Of course, well, you know,
But being a celebrity and being a good cook is not the same thing.
really.
Yeah.
I think if you look at social media these days, you've got people like Deliciously Ella, I don't know if you've heard of her, who's coming up, you know, for this healthy eating and this healthy lifestyle. And there are a lot more women who actually are using social media to promote that.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas
The models that turn into bakers or
Yeah.
turn into
Yeah.
we could talk about Gwyneth Paltrow as well.
vegetarian
And,
gurus.
Yeah, let's not.
No, exactly.
It was interesting what you were starting to say about the difference between being a celebrity chef and being a good cook. Yeah. And is there any difference that you found in terms of the gender bias in the world of actual cooking and that of being a celebrity?
I think now, I don't think there is, because, I mean, I respect some female chefs out there
Yeah, yeah.
who are real cooks,
yeah,
you know, actually go into the kitchen and work.
yeah.
Yeah. So no, I don't think it... You see, in the hospitality, I only know hospitality.
Yes.
In the
I'd even
catering.
say
By the sounds of
it's
it,
quite a female-dominated industry as well. I mean, would you?
well, predominantly front of house
Yeah.
is female-dominated, I would say. We always try to have female staff on board, especially out front. We try, but
Yes, why?
More welcoming.
the attention to detail, more welcoming, deal with situations. It's just easier to have a balance. It's just nice, you know. Instead of it's just been an all-male environment, it's just too much testosterone rocking about.
I think the key word there was balance.
Yes,
Balance.
very good balance.
Yeah, we like that.
Yeah, we do. And we'll talk a little bit more after the break. Join us then, 52%. Welcome back. Don't forget you can follow us on social media, Twitter, 52%_BayTV, and Facebook, 52%. Anyway, this year, September marks 100 years of the Women's Institute in the UK, and it's not all jam and Jerusalem, oh no. From the roots of the WI in the wartime Britain, the organisation is a British institution and has been supporting women at home and in the workplace and out and about for a century, no less. Gael joined Central Liverpool WI for a crafts evening to find out what the WI is all about.
I'm with Gaynor, who's the president of the Women's Institution here in Liverpool. Hello.
Hello, hi.
We're here for one of your sessions. Maybe you can tell us first, how did you meet? First, how did you come to the Women's Institution?
Well, I joined the Women's Institute when they started doing Save the Bees. So we used to meet down in Blackburn House, and they arranged for the WI to look after some bees that they were getting on the roof. So I went along and I went on the course and everything, and I started beekeeping through the WI and Blackburn House. And so that's really why I joined the WI, and that was about 2008 that campaign was. So I've been here ever since. And this is something new that we're trying, because, as you said, we're in the German church, but we've sort of outgrown the German church now. So we're moving to our new premises, which is the Quaker Meeting House in School Lane in town. 2005 it first started here, so we're the oldest W in Liverpool, but there are quite a few others. So there's Woolton and Childwall, there's one in Rainhill, Highton, Halewood is quite a well-established one as well. So there's quite a few. You know, there's an awful lot of interest in the WI, and I think, you know, it's the centenary year this year, so it's really exciting time.
And from what I've read, the Women's Institute, it's about tea and singing Jerusalem and
Jam in Jerusalem, yeah.
Is it just about that really, or what do you do?
Well, our monthly meetings, we have something different. The idea of the Women's Institute is to sort of empower and support women and bring them together. And so a lot of it is, it's not really educational, but we have a lot of very interesting talks. Like our next one, I think, is in herbal medicine. And then we've got Bollywood programmed in, and there's just so many different things, and a lot of them are suggested by the members as well. So if they want somebody to come and talk to them, like we're trying to get somebody to come and talk to us about really famous Liverpool women, and so it's just lots and lots of different things at our monthly meetings. And we also have socials as well, so that we can all get to know each other and have a chat. And yes, there is tea and cake. Yes, there is. But the WI itself is actually quite a political organisation. It is all about empowering women and women's causes and women's issues. And so yes, it's a very good sort of club to belong to.
And do you think that it's going to go on for another 100 years?
I don't see why not. I mean, why not? It's brilliant, so getting together, learning something new, trying something different, and chatting with nice people. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Kate, you're part of the Women Institution as well. What made you join the organisation?
Well, I didn't really know very much about the organisation apart from what it did nationally, so I found out about it through that, and I just came along, and I really enjoy just meeting new people, and I get to see different people than what I'd meet doing other social activities. We do something different every month, so there's lots of variety and a great sense of community.
Natalie, you just joined for the first time today.
Yes,
What do you think about it?
It's really good so far, yeah. I just found them on Facebook actually and decided to come along.
Well, we joined it in the beginning just to see what it was about. Out of curiosity, I'd say. Every month we just thought we'd go back. No, we've been here from the day one, and we've enjoyed every one of them. Everything's been so versatile and so different.
As Genna was saying, the Liverpool Women's Institute gets together every second Monday of the month, the next meeting being on Monday the 14th of September at the Quaker Meeting House in School Lane. And as you can see behind me, it's not just jam and cake. It brings together women of all ages, and it's probably why it lasted so long.
The Women's Institute, the WI, 100 years old, who knew? The fact it says institute, though, doesn't that make it a bit archaic? Is it still relevant? What do you think?
I think the only times I've heard of the WI was back in the 90s when they did the slow clap for the Prime Minister.
So that's the political side.
That's the political side. And then the other one is Calendar Girls when they got naked for their calendar. But you must be...
Yeah, that's my bag totally. Yes, I would have been there with my camera for that one,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Doing a slow clap as you stripped.
Interestingly, though, I saw a programme that really shifted my opinion of the WI that was fronted by Lucy Worsley. I don't know if you've heard of Lucy Worsley. She's the curator and historian at this enormous place in London, the name of which I've forgotten for the moment. It'll come back. And she did a BBC4 sort of documentary that was called Cake Bakers and Troublemakers. So I checked that out. Oh, okay. And interestingly, the WI, many of its founding members were suffragettes.
Of course.
And it was, suffragettes, really highly political. It was about educating women, bringing women together, and in fact empowering them, as was said on the interview, and giving women that option of making a change for themselves. And the WI have in fact changed many things. Like in, I think it was 63 or 64, to get on a jury, you had to be a homeowner. And the majority of people were men, homeowners. Women were massively in the minority of homeowners then. The WI campaigned to change all of that. And in 1974, that was changed so that the home ownership clause was removed, which is quite extraordinary. And there are many it's interesting that the public perception of the WI is it's all the cakes, you know, and the
very
baking,
outdated, isn't it?
and it's all to do with, you know, women in the kitchen. And in fact, it's very outdated. The Shoreditch sisters, which is a London-based group, are campaigning now for the refugee crisis, for example.
You don't see anything for the WI. I mean, Mark, what's your take on the WI? Any preconceptions?
Had you heard of it?
I have heard of it, but it's I mean, it is pretty alien to me, obviously. As you say about the slow clap, and I don't know about the political side of it, but not in depth. No, it's not something.
I think it's one of those organisations that does actually have this reputation, but based on a lot of the perception,
It's
which
a public
isn't necessarily
perception.
true. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. But the reality is, that the women are getting in there, and they're actually changing things.
But I think any organisation that encourages training of women, encourages empowerment, encourages women to come together is fantastic. So
it was interesting to see the age ranges as well, because I assumed, like probably most of us, they were all older ladies. However, there were a couple of young girls in there. But we're talking about gender inequality. Where's the male WI? The MI? Or are they missing in?
They've already got that from the old boys' club.
The Masonic Lodge?
Yeah, Masonic Lodge, Rotary, even though they do have the inner wheel.
Of course,
And it's a traditional old boys' club.
They're still doing that.
Absolutely.
I'm in my own little cocoon. I don't know. I'm in my shed. I don't do any handshakes.
Fabulous concoctions.
But in terms of gender and how it sort of links into feminism, I think they're doing a great job for motivating, encouraging women.
Is it still relevant though?
I think it's still relevant, but I think we've got to be careful that if we have an all-female organisation, that we end up sort of cutting ourselves off, and we still got to engage with men.
Yes.
And that's part of the, of changing the inequality. You can't do it all by ourselves.
Do you think they should allow men in then?
Oh, I don't know.
Because we've got this thing about golf clubs. There's certain golf clubs that don't allow women. And obviously some of them are changing the rules or relaxing the rules and allowing men on certain days. It's something like the WI, because it's so well known. Should they start to allow men in? Is that what you're saying? Or
I mean, we're discriminating if we don't allow men
But
to
there's
join.
such a thing as positive discrimination, isn't there?
That's very true.
So,
And also there are those traditionally sort of like male clubs that, I mean, we still live in a patriarchy, essentially, although that does seem to be changing a little, and women are getting out there and doing more things. Maybe until the perception changes where we no longer actually see gender. We're gender blind. We see the individual. We see the qualities of the individual, and we're not necessarily looking and trying to, if you like, categorise. Because we do, as human beings, we tend to want to do that.
Do they have a pink nursery or a blue nursery?
So in just talking about the Women's Institute, it still has a function while we have the consciousness, while we're still evolving. Exactly, it still has a place.
And as we're
while
continually
we're still
evolving, there's it's the demand and supply. If there's a demand for it, it's going to be there. But I suppose in today's society, there's always new groups starting, and for the WI to stay around for another 100 years, they need to maybe perhaps do less of the more old-fashioned things, if that's the correct term. Do they need to bring more updated things? Maybe get some of the older ladies on an Xbox. Just saying.
But interestingly, like you were saying earlier about the age range on the clip, the Shoreditch sisters, which are a London-based group, many of them are young, actually, and they've given themselves names like the Shoreditch sisters, which is trying to get away from the Women's Institute.
That's got so
hanging off it,
indeed, so many
indeed, and it probably didn't when it started, but it has now.
So maybe it's their branding that they need to look at.
It is.
Maybe they
Well,
do
they've branded the Shoreditch sisters have obviously branded themselves differently,
They need
and
to
they're
be
trying to
marketed,
take.
don't they?
Yes.
Obviously by women.
It's an opportunity for somebody here.
Yeah, most definitely an opportunity. Let's pinkify them. No, that's too much. Join us after the break, where we'll have more discussions and we'll go back to what's trending. Welcome back. In this episode, we've been focusing on women in the workplace and are joined by chef Marc Wilkinson from Fresh. But before we get back on topic, it's time for my favourite part of the show, What's Trending, where we take a look at what's been happening in the world recently. Of course, we can't do What's Trending without the awful scenes we're seeing in Calais, the refugees.
Horrendous.
Thoughts?
Horrendous. I think the turning point was obviously the photo of that poor 3-year-old boy. And I think everybody, you know, especially in the UK and especially in Liverpool, you know, it really did touch, you know, everyone's humanity.
Yeah.
But you've got to think, what made a family take their family onto this boat to go on this journey,
to put themselves at that kind of a risk.
Yeah.
What on earth are they fleeing from?
Absolutely.
And that sticks in my mind.
Oh yes, just horrendous.
But I have to say, I've got so much respect for all of these people who are obviously in an incredibly difficult situation, and they've decided, you know, I need to do something for my family here.
Yes.
I need to take them on this journey to move to a better place, for a better life for my family.
I think
And they know the risks.
Yes.
So to make that decision to go, those risks
compared
are
to what
less
they're living with. Yeah.
than staying here, than the risk staying here is, I mean, it really tests our imagination, and I think that's a good thing. You know, that we have to think, what is it like to be in a war zone? What is it like to?
You get caught up in your own daily dramas,
Oh,
don't you?
absolutely.
In your little white picket
Yeah,
fences
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
getting the kids back to school, saving for Christmas. I think as much as there was a lot of controversy over that image, it definitely should have been seen to bring us out of our comfort zones and see this actually is real life. This is happening.
Yes.
You know, step out of your comfort zone and look at what is going on in the world.
And what is fantastic as well is, I think, is how people have got behind sort of like social media, and you've got, you know, people signing petitions saying, you know, let more people into the country. We'll let them into our homes.
And the Pope has even said that every
Vatican's
parish
going to have two.
They're going to have two.
They've offered to have
I
two
wonder how many
families.
rooms they've got though. You know, I think they've got more than 2 rooms.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
The Pope has said that each parish should give a home to a family of refugees, and because there are 2 parishes in the Vatican, they're going to give 2 families a home, and every parish throughout the world, across the world,
there's a lot of
should do
empty
this.
churches. I mean, the church attendance has dropped massively, hasn't it? There's a lot of empty churches.
Yes.
But you know, let's not forget though, charity does begin at home.
Absolutely.
So whatever your politics are, there's a lot of charities all over our region. We don't just want to focus on this one, but it is current for the moment.
Yes.
So let's move
It's a
on.
crisis.
It is a crisis, but let's move on to something that Marc, I'm sure, will have an opinion on. Pizza Express and this 8% levy on tipping. Marc, do you tip?
Do I tip when I'm out? I do, yes.
You do.
Even with bad service?
What does it take for you
It's
to
got
leave
to be
a tip?
bad.
It's got to be really bad.
Yeah. Do you base your tip on what you've eaten or the service or everything?
I base it on straight 10%.
Yeah.
So regardless if it's okay, it's not so bad, it's 10%. If it's amazing, more. But I have straight 10%. I just go on that.
Do you think it's nowadays almost like becoming such a social obligation? So when you are out, and depending on who you're out with, you know, you might be thinking, oh, well, I'm sat with so-and-so, so actually I need to do a 20% tip at least.
To impress
them.
To make that point.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Good
true.
for the staff.
It is.
What do you do with your staff tips? How does the individual waitress keep them? How do you divvy them out?
Well, to be honest...
Or waiter.
Or waiters,
Yes.
sorry, I apologise.
We have waiters as well.
Well, you did say that you preferred the girls on the floor.
Oh, I prefer a balance. Prefer a balance. It's good to have both sexes on the floor. But no, I think...
Keep it clean,
And moving swiftly on.
Yes, to tips.
Go on, what do you do with your tips?
Well, we don't do a service charge.
Now that's interesting.
No.
Because a lot of you posh restaurants have an automatic.
12.5%,
Yeah.
15%.
Yeah.
I don't do it.
That's really good to hear, bearing in mind, you know, your status.
Yeah, but I kind of like want people to make their own judgment if the staff deserve a tip or not.
There are some restaurants now that don't even have a price list, do they? That people are encouraged to pay what they feel it's worth. I think that's hellish.
I think it's also a massively cultural thing as well with tipping.
You should do that.
Over in America, you know, tipping is so ingrained into society, and that's obviously transferred over into the UK. Whereas in places like, you know, Japan or Fiji, it's really, really frowned upon, and even China, it's very culturally, it's a bad thing to be seen to be giving people tips. There's a new restaurant over in New York, which has now basically started a new policy where it says we pay our wait staff enough that you do not need to leave a tip. So it stops people feeling obligated.
I was reading a little bit about something like that, where there's the beginnings of that campaign in America now to sort of like pay the staff enough in the first place to stop the tipping, which I think is interesting because I wonder. I don't know if you know this, Mark. I was wondering, actually, where does this whole culture of tipping come from anyway? Why not pay them in the first place so that... I just don't quite understand, in the sense that, you know, in other professions or in other workplaces, we don't all get tips. You don't tip the bus conductor.
I mean, where did
you know, you don't.
At tipping,
do you know what I mean?
You tip the taxi driver though, don't you?
Yeah.
You do, and it's
Strange,
interesting.
because
But
it's a one-on-one interaction, isn't it? So you seem to...
guilty if you don't tip. I do. I tell you what trick I use. A hairdresser,
I sometimes don't know how to tip because it's like I don't want to offend them by giving them too little, and then I don't want to be almost too generous by giving them too much, and it's that difficult balance.
That's the 10% in a restaurant. I know if I go out to a bar, you go to the bar, you order your drinks, I always tip the first time because then you know when you go back again, they're more likely to serve you rather than leave you waiting. But other than that, I mean, Mark, is it something that you've seen a lot of it in your industry where the wages are reduced slightly because they know they're going to make them up with the tips?
Not where I work, but I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Does
it does happen.
Go into the kitchen?
Very few places actually goes into the kitchen.
Very few.
Yeah, the places I've worked in my younger days, it would be shared between the staff waiting the tables. The bar staff would have their own tips, and the waiters and waitresses would have their tips. And
I have to say, I've worked in two places, and it used to annoy me immensely if I'm working so hard, you know, doing this excellent service. I'm, you know, bringing loads of tips in, and then it comes to the end of the day, and you've got somebody else you're working with who's just been quite lacklustre, and you're having to split your hard-earned tip money with somebody else.
Somebody who's
but you are absolutely. But what I don't mind is actually spare. You know, when I used to share my tips with, it would be, you know, people back of house, you know, the cooks and the KPs who wouldn't be getting any tips. That to me is fine.
Yes, I agree with that.
So your tips in Fresh, they stay purely on the ground floor as opposed to they're not shared to the kitchen.
And based on the service received.
Based on, I mean, because we don't have service charge, so the tips you're talking about are negligible. Because people, surprisingly, I mean, on average, we could have 2% left. So it's not 10%. No, it can be 2% on a week.
So do you make
can be
that
1% on a week.
Wages?
No, wages is a totally separate thing.
Yeah. But no, what I mean is because you know your staff aren't going to necessarily receive a lot of tips, you pay them a little bit more an hour.
No, I try to, because the problem with Fresh is it's so small. And it's incredibly difficult for us to actually make money. Incredibly difficult. So we're trying to give them a fair wage that I can. And then tips is just if they get any cash tip, it's just an added bonus. There's no guarantee, there's no, I mean, some establishments will automatically build a tip percentage into your hourly rate. You know, some bars will say, we'll pay you £1 an hour tip.
Really?
Yeah. Regardless of what the tips are in the pot at the end of the day. So if the tip pot is good, then it's good for the bar because they've just paid you £1 an hour.
So not everybody's like Pizza Express then with this levy, and that's on card payments, isn't it? That not
so maybe it's a case of you pay the card and you leave a cash tip going forward.
Well, there's also the facility where it says on when you give your card and it says gratuity, yes or no, and then it's up to you to put in how much.
I never do that because I suppose I never know where's it actually going. Whereas I know if I leave, a couple of pounds, depending on what you've had, at least they will be able to take it.
I always ask actually. Yes, if I'm going to leave a tip, I always say, are you going to get this money if I leave a tip?
That's a good tip for tipping.
Absolutely. And because on one particular occasion, I asked them if I get a tip, and they said no, it goes to pay our wages.
Wow.
Yeah. There's also been in the news about charities selling their database. This was, again, horrifying.
This is horrendous.
Unlawful, in fact. You know, they're
Probably,
not following the
yeah.
Data Protection Act.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it is unlawful.
But I think the stories that are coming out, you know, they really sort of touch your hearts. You know, these poor pensioners, you know, they want to do the right thing, so they subscribe, you know, they've donated a certain set of money, and then suddenly they're bombarded by phone calls and letters.
Oh, here's
Does
a
it make you
person who
choose your
donates.
charity more wisely, though? I mean,
Oh, definitely. I actually don't subscribe to any charities now. How I donate is when I have friends or family who say, I'm running a marathon, actively doing something, I'm doing this fundraising trip, then I will go on and donate money
it's
specifically
changed
to
how
them.
you
How I
donate rather than
absolutely.
the amount, yeah.
Mark, is Fresh affiliated to a charity at all, or?
Well, it changes each year. I mean, I did Action Against Hunger for a few years. This year it's changed. I decided I want to be more involved and I want to see exactly where it's going.
Excellent, yeah.
So this Christmas I'm trying to feed a local shelter for the week running up to Christmas.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And to give them scarves and gloves for any homeless people that come into the centre.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's
So
But then
keeping
I
it
know
local as well.
exactly that it's happening,
Yes.
and it's not just money going into a box, and
Because you hear so
how
many
much percentage
stories, don't
of
you?
that is actually
And
going
how
to
much
the right
the running
source.
cost or the
Yeah.
staff wages before it gets
People
to them.
complain about the admin fee. Well, you know,
Yes.
we never get to see it. It's just the admin fee, blah, blah, blah. Listen, we've got to stop. It's flown. That's our first episode of Series 2 done. So that's all we've got for today. Thank you to our guest, Mark. Thank you to Sarah. Thank you to Kathy. Thank you to Maisie. It's great to be back. And we'll see you next time, where we'll be LOLing all over the place because it's Liverpool Comedy Festival and we're going to be discussing women in comedy. So we'll see you next time.